Hey everyone, welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy, I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. How are you all doing today? We're on the other side of 500 episodes now, episode 501. I said that as if it should hold some kind of significance outside of last week was, I guess, a big milestone, episode 500, and now we're here, chugging along. But I gotta tell you, if episode 500 is the apogee in terms of numbers, it's definitely not the apogee in terms of quality, because today's episode is great. It's Indigo de Souza. If you don't know who Indigo is, why don't I read you her bio right now. Originally from Spruce Pine, North Carolina, and later based in Asheville, North Carolina, musician Indigo de Souza recorded her first EP, Boys, in a friend's garage in 2016. Following another short-form release, she delivered her debut album, I Love My Mom, in 2018. She then signed with Saddle Creek, which reissued the debut just weeks before releasing the tempestuous Any Shape You Take at the end of August. I gotta tell you, folks, it's one of my favorite things released this year. You can tell I took some of this bio from one that was already written, because usually when I write the bios, I do not editorialize except to say how much I like the thing at the end. Tempestuous. I guess it is. I'm gonna say this. I Love My Mom. I think it's a really good album. I like it a lot. There are some great songs on there. But Any Shape You Take, man, I've been listening to it at least once a day. It's so good. This is a really great talk that I had with Indigo. This is her first podcast ever. So I welcomed her to the world of talking about yourself for an unedited hour. But Indigo had a really interesting childhood and adolescence. Very fascinating mom. The same mom that is the titular I Love My Mom. So I hope you enjoy this talk. And if you do, of course, and you want to check out other episodes, what I like to do right here is a recommended if you like. If you like my talk with Indigo, maybe you'll like my talks with other women from indie rock. Why, Mary Timony, I just talked to her a little while ago. Ellen Kempner of Pale Hound. Sadie Dupuis of Speedy Ortiz. And Sad 13 as well. Ramona Gonzalez from Nightjewel, Isabel Campbell of Belle and Sebastian, so on and so forth. Check out those episodes. If you like what you hear, you can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast from. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Andy Beckerman. Great episodes coming up, including David Thomas from Pure Ubu, Julie Doiron of Eric's Trip, of tons of her own music. She did an album with Phil Elverum of Microphones a little while ago. That was great. So stay tuned for those episodes. But for now, let's talk to Indigo. To ask about the actual things people make, but I was wondering if you could help me figure out something, a conundrum that I have listening to your music. I can't tell, okay, because you're like 15 years younger than me, I think. I can't tell. I find it, there's like this, I would say, sadness in your lyrics and your music, and I can't tell if that's me thinking about when I was your age and there being this like kind of nostalgia, or if there is a kind of, if you write with a kind of like feeling of sadness already in your heart. I don't know, however you want to describe the actual creative process. I don't know if that's an answerable question, but I'm kind of curious if you can help me figure that out.
Yeah, so you're basically just asking me if I'm sad.
Well, it doesn't, I mean, like, look, I don't know how you write, but like when I'm writing something, I don't necessarily have the emotion that I'm putting into something in my body, but like, I don't know, lyrics or like music, I guess it's a little different than like scripts. And I'm trying to think back to like when I did write music for real. And I don't know if I even had whatever emotions I was trying to put into the music then in my body as I put it in there. So I don't know if I'm saying if you're sad, but like, do you intend there to be some kind of sadness in there? Or am I just picking up something in my own body that I'm putting onto your music? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. It's probably a little bit of both, but I would say that pretty much all of my music does have a lot of sadness infused, mostly because the human experience to me is heavy in general, and although I am a very like happy person and I love to celebrate and dance and be present with the world in that way, I am also someone who has struggled with mental illness and just like deep struggle my whole life internally. So definitely music is like something I make often from that space. And yeah, just from a very honest space when I'm processing pain.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about this being present. What is that like? How is that possible?
I don't know how it's possible. Honestly, it feels like there was just at some point along the way I realized that if I'm gonna be dead at the end of this whole thing, and I don't even have a lot of time to be alive, and I have no idea how long I will be alive, then I think it became very clear to me that like if that's the case, then I'm going to have as much fun as possible. And like I'm not going to do things that make me unhappy or have people in my life that make me unhappy, or I'm not going to do a job that makes me hate my daily life. And something happened where that became a realization for me, and I actually stuck to that kind of modality. I don't ever stray from that now. I just like am fully engaged with my life, and I only do what I want to do. Yeah.
Was there an actual incident? Like I remember the like early 2000s for me was this like huge realization started to dawn on me. I think it really took hold like during the financial crash, where I'm like, oh, why am I doing the things my parents said I'm supposed to be doing? I mean, it was like a slow dawning. Like I already kind of like left grad school by that time and was in New York doing comedy. But like it was really this whole thing. I mean, you were still like a kid at that time, I think, right?
Probably. I don't know.
So was there like an incident, or was it just like something that some idea that came to you over time?
I mean, I think that I knew that from probably around my teen years. I had like a series of existential crises where I kind of like came to and woke up to the idea that people actually die and then they're gone. And I think that became like a reality in my mind, and that's what sort of started the whole process. And then honestly, it fully like became a reality during the pandemic, because I kind of like saw this structural society that I have never related to like fall apart, and that it made me realize that I just wasn't going to waste any more time like feeling like I needed to try to fit into that society, because it doesn't work anyways. And I was just like, I have felt out of place my whole life, and like I can't keep up with the societal structure. And so when it broke down, it was kind of like a relief. I was kind of like, yeah, it doesn't work, and I'm just not gonna push myself to be a part of it anymore. I'm done.
Man, I'm jealous, because I didn't get to that point until my late 20s. And I kind of wish I had gotten there earlier, because I didn't try to, I don't know, it was weird. Like, I grew up kind of alienated too. But I still tried to like walk this line where I'm fitting in even though I don't fit in. And I still wanted to be accepted by, I don't know if you have this, but like I wanted to be accepted by a society that I didn't like.
Yeah, I get that. I wanted to be accepted for exactly what I am, by the society that I don't like. I wanted them
Yes.
to see what I am and be kind of swayed by that and realize that it's okay for me to be as different as I am. And I realized that I actually will never get that kind of, I'll never get that.
Yep.
And that's
Wow.
fine.
Yeah.
I'm much happier on the other side.
Yeah, no, totally. But it's tough to if you could tell yourself that at that earlier point, it's tough for you to realize, like, no, once you kind of like push through whatever that force field is, it is much better. But you can't, in that space you're in, whatever that earlier paradigm is, you can't see that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's hard because, we're put in school and we're kind of taught how we're supposed to fit in society from an early age. And they don't teach us anything about, like, the earth or about relationships or anything that's, like, very real. They just teach us about money and management and what role we're going to fill in society when we're older and how to fit into a structure and to not have any individuality. And so it's kind of like the people who break out of that, I'm like proud of those people.
Well, I mean, I grew up in the suburbs, and it's funny that you said, like, they kind of like, they want to flatten individuality, I noticed, where it's just like everyone kind of wants, this is a dumb metaphor. My dog, Mabel, we call her Cop because every time the cats are kind of just like playing, she barks at them because Mabel wants everything to just be calm, and she doesn't want there to be any and that means calm in terms of like if they're fighting, and calm in terms if they're playing. So she doesn't want joy and she doesn't want aggression. She just wants everything to be calm. And I feel like that's like the suburbs, or that's like just kind of like like the cops of the suburb, which include actual cops and like authority figures all over, just want everything to be calm, and so they want everything flattened and boring. And that's the problem I had. But you grew up in a kind of in a small town, right?
Yeah, I grew up in Spruce Pine. It's like a very small, conservative, flattened town.
So, okay. Like how small?
I don't know. I think I feel like when I lived there, there were maybe 2,000 or 3,000 people that lived there.
Okay, so
Very
like you
small.
knew everyone, kind of.
Yeah, definitely.
Did you feel like I think about this a lot, like how difficult is it to be yourself or be an individual when like you kind of know everyone's eyes are on you in a certain way?
Yeah, for me it was really hard. I was like very young when I lived there. I left Spruce Pine when I was 16. So the whole time that I was there, I was very confused by kind of the difference between my family and everybody else's families. Because it was just it was very obvious that my mom was different from everybody else's mom, like, because she visually is a very wild person and wears wild clothing and is covered in tattoos, and like her truck is all decked out with flames painted on it, naked Barbie dolls glued to it, and action figures glued to it. And she sends me to school with like hummus and like healthy veggies and stuff, which is not what anybody else was eating with their like plastic Lunchables and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. It was really hard for me because I kind of assumed that there was something wrong with us for a long time, since everybody else felt very similar and then we were so different, and I didn't have much to compare it to. Mm-hmm. So I was just kind of convinced that there was something wrong with my family.
Really?
Until I left.
Okay, so I always have this kind of like assumption that always gets dashed when I talk to people younger than me on the show. Like if I talk to like guests who are queer on the show, and I'm like, oh, well, things must be better now. And they're like, no, my high school was hell still. And I'm like, oh, okay. And it's the same kind of thing where I thought, oh, well, like, you can at least go on the internet and find out that, like, there are other, like, that's not, you know, your mom was an artist, right? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, you can find out, like, oh, well, that's, like, you know, she's her own kind of artist, but she at least fits into this kind of category of artist, and that's, and it's not weird or anything like that. But you're saying, no, it was still difficult.
Yeah, well, I think kind of the only other examples of artists that I'd seen, they just weren't as, like, outgoing as my mom is, or... for example, she paints cartoon Kama Sutra and, like, very graphic, like, cartoon sexual paintings. And she did a showing of those paintings in that town. And I remember some of my friends' parents ended up at the showing and got, like, were very shocked by it. Or, like, this one time she, just for fun, dressed up in this wild costume and then chained one of her friends to the end of this long chain she had, and dressed him up as, like, a creature. And then they just, as a experiment, went down the street in Spruce Pine, like, screaming, and he was crawling on the ground, and she was, like, rankling him with this chain. Just kind of like an art installation, which no one even saw, but it was just, like, for her own entertainment. And she really enjoyed, like, just shocking people and seeing people's reactions to art that she knew they probably wouldn't relate to. And so I saw other artists around, but they were just, like, you know, a pottery person, or someone who paints landscapes, and I just was confused why she was so much more, like, just beyond those other artists that I'd seen. In, like, how loud she was with her art. And, like, later on when I moved to Asheville, I realized that there are people that are just as loud with their art, but I just had been kind of living under a rock.
Were you mortified, or were you into the fact that she was so kind of like herself?
No, I was mortified for a long time until I moved to Asheville, mostly because my life was affected by it. Because in school people would make fun of my family, and they'd make fun of her truck, and yeah, just by association I was, no matter, even if I came to school with a Hollister shirt on to try to fit in, they all, like, knew where I came from, and there was no hiding from it. Did it make you want to fit in more? Yeah, no, it did. The only reason I ever wanted to fit in before I left Spruce Pine is just because I wanted to feel safe. And I felt like when I stuck out, people, like, saw me and would pick on me. But if I could just kind of blend in with everyone, then I wouldn't get picked out of a crowd.
Yeah. No, I really identify with that, because I always have been, like, a weird person, like, just writing comedy and stuff since I was a kid. That was just, like, weird stuff. And I thought as long as I dressed normally and didn't stick out, that, like, I can think or write whatever I want to write, but I won't, like, no one's going to bully me as long as I, like, just, like, blend in, as long as I wear, like, a button-up, collared shirt and khakis or something. No one's going to bother me.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I knew that they were wrong, and, in my heart, I knew that the way they were treating me was wrong, and so there was something evil about it, but I still just wanted to do anything I could to not have it happening on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. How did your mom end up in Spruce Pine as opposed to New York or, I don't know, Los Angeles, San Francisco?
Yeah, I don't know. I remember asking her a few times, but I can't even remember the answer, because I think it was just as simple as, like, she saw that the mountains looked pretty and wanted to move there. And I think we moved somewhere that was close to Asheville because we liked Asheville a lot, but Asheville was kind of more expensive. And yeah, and then once we were in Spruce Pine, it's a strange conservative town, but it's also really beautiful there. And she kind of just got attached and wanted to help change the town, or kind of like bring color to the town. And that's kind of been her goal for years now, just to bring life to the town that's not been there before she arrived. And she now has a mini golf course there. And over the years, she had a pizza restaurant and an art studio and a donut shop and a free store. And there was one more thing. I think it was just like a restaurant with many different things on the menu. But she's done a lot for the town. I don't think that the town has ever really recognized her for it, though.
Yeah. I mean, that's brilliant. I really like that idea. It made me think, I'm like, oh, if there ever could be like a second New Deal type thing, there should be a program that like embeds an artist in every small town.
Yeah.
To try to make it a little more weird, to try to like knock everything off kilter a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's needed.
So, okay, do you know like what gave your mom the kind of confidence to do that? Because that seemed like to say, willfully say, I'm going to, you know, besides the fact that it's beautiful and, you know, it helps to have beautiful scenery to inspire you if you're creating any kind of art. What gives you that kind of not just confidence, but I guess defiance too? Because like it's to go into a small town where like probably people are going to resist the kind of art you're making and the kind of way you're living your life. That's like you're setting yourself up for some difficulty.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not sure. She's always just been a very strong-willed person, and her art, she makes so much art. It's almost like a manic thing. Like she's constantly working on many different projects at a time, and she also builds like small structures. Like she's built a little house on her property and a pizza oven outdoor space and a patio and gardens, and she just like... Yeah, I don't really know. I think she just wanted to settle down in a space where she could kind of spread out and just make as much art as she wanted to. And yeah, I don't really think she's ever cared about what people think about her or if anyone even sees what she's making. I recently was like pushing her to put her paintings on Instagram because she painted my album covers, and
right.
People ask me about where they can see more of her art, and she doesn't have anything online. So recently she's been putting some of her art on her Instagram. Yeah.
Do you know at what point you became that it went from mortifying to you appreciating the fact that she was doing this and that you were raised in this kind of atmosphere?
Yeah, I think really it was just when I moved to Asheville. I entered the school kind of assuming that they would treat me the same as the last group of people at the other school had, and then it was just such an opposite reaction. I was instantly like flooded with friends, and people were excited about, like, I would tell stories about my mom, and everyone loved the stories and thought that my life was cool and my mom was cool and my my art was cool, and it was just like a much more diverse feeling at that school. And yeah, really just that experience in general kind of shifted my feeling towards my mom. And I also was just really grateful to her for realizing that I needed to move to Asheville, because she didn't come with me. I moved to Asheville and I lived with my sister when I was 16, and my sister would drive me to school, and I think she was probably like 28 at the time. And so yeah, I don't know, it just gave me perspective kind of being away from her, and then also seeing many people that were more like her than I'd ever seen before.
Is your mom... I don't know how to put this. Like, did you have to parent her at all? Like, the way that you're describing her, it makes it seem like it's more like a Gilmore Girls type thing in some way, where she's like more sisterly?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's interesting. You would think that from everything I'm saying, but not really. She's a very interesting person. It's like she's an artist, but she's not like extremely free-spirited. Which I've always found really interesting about her and kind of confusing. That like she's actually very structured and very like good at being a member of society, and is like very good at keeping up with anything societal. But she makes a ton of art also. And she kind of like, she can seem like she's in pain sometimes when she's making art. Like she'll be working on a painting and just be extremely focused on it and kind of using up this kind of energy that seems kind of stressful. Yeah, I don't know.
No, I totally get that. Like sometimes I'll be like writing or working on something, and my wife will come in, and you just get so focused. I mean, I don't know if you do that with music too, right? You get like all your energies on this thing, and you're kind of like not in this world, the actual world. You're just kind of in the world of the thing you're making. And so you're like half a ghost. Is that a dumb metaphor? Yeah. But you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, there was like a time recently when I was doing vocals for a track I was making, and then my roommate walked in, and I felt like so embarrassed for some reason because I had my headphones on and all I could hear was the track, and then I like saw something move out of the corner of my eye and got really scared.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, that's interesting too. Like I mean, there's a reason why I ended up not mostly performing and not really doing music professionally, because I never got over the embarrassment of singing. I never got over the embarrassment of like putting any kind of emotion into my voice and having someone witness it. Because more so than like if I'm writing a script or something, like what you described is a vulnerable moment that someone then just comes in and witnesses.
Yeah, it definitely took me a while to get over that too, which I think I could also credit to my mom, because she pushed me to play in coffee shops and on the streets and just anywhere that she could get me a gig. She would just place me there from the time I was 11 until I moved out. I was constantly performing original songs for people, and I was, chronically shy in the beginning, and then slowly opened up and got used to it. And I'm very grateful for all that practice now, because now I am able to make a career out of something that used to feel really scary.
Okay. If you can, I don't know if you can remember. Walk me through like one of those early things, because like if my parents had made me, all I'm imagining is like you like clutching guitar and your mom like pushing you like into like on the, outside of a coffee shop to busk or something, and she's like,
yeah. I mean, I think that performances that were more structured, like a coffee shop, were easier for me, and I remember wanting to do them but being so scared, just like breaking into this like extreme feeling of anxiety, but then pushing through and performing the songs and having a good time ultimately. But with busking on the streets, for some reason, that was like the most painful for me, because no one was asking for me to be there. I was just showing up on the street and just assuming that people wanted to hear what I had to say. And yeah, I remember a few times, but especially this one time busking, when I just was actually sobbing and begging my mom to like not have to do it, and I just was like, just no part of me wanted to do it, and I was so embarrassed about having to do it, and she just like, I don't remember what she said to me to get me to do it. I think she just said like, just do it for 1 hour, like just you'll feel good after you do it and people will love it, just do it for an hour. And I don't know. I always felt, my whole life I've felt like I have to do what she tells me to do, because she's my mom and I really want her to be proud of me. That's like my main thing, which I've learned to let go of over time. But yeah, I played, and I probably did end up having a good time, because every time I played anywhere on the streets or in a coffee shop, people would gather, and it would always be like a really sweet moment. And yeah, I was a little kid playing music, and they were like original songs, so I'm sure that people loved it.
Do you remember at what point it goes from it being something your mom's making you to do, even if you did want to do it, right, in some part of you? Do you remember when it goes to being like a conscious choice?
Yeah, I think it was around when I was 14. I had this experience where my mom put me into this brown bag singer-songwriter contest thing that was happening in Asheville, and she would drive me for the different stages of the competition, and I made it to the finals, and I won second place. And the person who wins first place got like a radio time, like a radio performance on this show called Local Color that I really liked. And I was sad that I didn't get first place, but then the radio host came up to me and offered me time on the show anyways, because she just really liked me. And so I did that, and there was a live audience watching. And I think that's when I was starting to feel like more established singing my songs for people, like I could do it with less anxiety, and I was kind of starting to enjoy it. And then when we were leaving that experience out in the parking lot, some people who worked at the studio that the show was filmed at came running out in the parking lot and intersected my mom and I, and just kind of said that they wanted to take me under their wing and like teach me about recording and show me how things worked in the music world, because they felt like I was headed in that direction. And so that kind of like sparked this, like, I think in that moment I was like, I can do this as a career. This is going to be my life. Like, these people believe in me, and my mom believes in me, and I'm going to make this work. And so, yeah, I think ever since I was 14, that's when I really kind of had my career in my sights.
Interesting. And you also, like, I think you said earlier about, I don't know if this comes from your personal experience or if just like your quote unquote generation, but like you said, like, I'm going to die at some point. I better do the thing I want to do. You know, you grow up in a world that's like, I had to discover, the world has always been the way it's been, but I had to kind of discover it, you know, reading, right after college. I got like very politically conscious, started reading Chomsky and Howard Zinn and everyone. And, I think you kind of grew up, I mean, you tell me if this is accurate or not, that you kind of grew up knowing that we were slowly sliding into dystopia unless we stopped it. And I'm kind of curious if that has affected you, or the way that you think about things, or the way that you create.
How do you mean exactly?
Well, yeah, I grew up in Reagan's America, and everything was sunny and shiny, and we're a world superpower. And then the Soviet Union fell, and now we're the number one superpower in the world, and everything's great, and everything will be great forever. And it was just this kind of like, almost in retrospect, a manic energy of like people lying to themselves, like people just being like, oh no, this is going to be great. We're never going to fail. Everything's going to be good. America's going to be the best. There's no such thing as climate change. Like, and you're just like, whoa, slow down, world. You're you know, falling apart. But you kind of grew up like that. That we were past that. We were past the manic high, in terms of civilization. And I don't know if you've thought about if that's affected you.
I mean, yeah, it's funny. My mom got me like a 4-track tape recorder when I was young, and I think I got it when I was 9 or so. And when I started playing guitar and writing songs, I would record onto that. And one of the songs I still have the recordings, and one of the songs is a song about climate change, and it was just kind of depicting the end of the world and everything going up in flames, and families saying that they love each other, and and just like the death of everything. And it's a tiny little like child's voice singing about that. So I think that I have always been kind of doomsday in my mind, or like my mom tells me the story that one time we were in the car when I was 9, and I was staring out the window, and then I turned to her and asked her how to turn off the thoughts in my brain. I asked her if there was a way to turn off the thoughts. Just matter of factly, like I was just wondering.
Did you ever figure that out?
No.
Yeah, me neither.
I could probably try meditation or something, but I haven't gotten to that level yet.
Yeah, that's what every therapist tells me, is meditation.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think I'll just put on The Simpsons while I sleep and just let it run the whole night. And then anytime I wake up, that'll take over for my brain.
Yeah, I think I'll just put on some Love Island.
Was your dad around at all?
No. My dad and mom divorced when I was 3. I think I was 2 or 3. And he is kind of like, he has not been around, but he would just visit me every couple of years. And just, he would come and he would like be in a hotel room down the street, and I would go and hang out with him in the hotel room and like watch TV, and maybe we'd get some food, and then he would leave. It was like, I really didn't see him very often. But he is a bossa nova guitar player, and he lives in Brazil most of the time, and then he comes back to America and makes money to bring back to Brazil. He's just kind of like a struggling artist. It makes me really sad, actually. I just always wish that I could help him in some way, but I just don't know how. But yeah, he has not really been around. And then I had like a stepdad figure who came into my life when I was 7, in Burnsville, North Carolina, which is where we moved before Spruce Pine. We lived in like a little log cabin out there. Really? And and he's still in my life now. He's in his 70s. He lives out in Spruce Pine.
So is your relationship with your stepdad figure more formative than your relationship with your biological dad? Yeah, definitely. I have like a lot of memories with my stepdad, Tom. He definitely spent a lot of time with me, especially when I was young, and did a lot of like fun dad-like activities with me. Have you ever been to Brazil?
I've been there when I was 2, but I don't remember it at all. There's pictures of me with a Tweety bird birthday cake.
Like, does Brazil, like, does it hold any kind of like... Does it hold any, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like, is there any pull? Like, does it hold any part in you besides the fact that your dad's from there? Or is it just like, I don't know, whatever?
I think it holds pull. I feel, like my dad, the whole situation with my dad is like one of the heaviest things in my life. Like I will often just like find myself crying about it, and I think I just am, it's such a confusing thing to have that kind of disconnect from a part of your family, and I think I definitely someday would like to meet them, at least just to kind of further understand like where I biologically am from, and to understand like Brazilian culture more, and also because I know that my family in Brazil like really wants to meet me, and they are like, they listen to my music, and they they have reached out to me before, so I would like to meet them someday. That's the only pull, really.
Yeah, I mean it's really difficult in that, like, is it that what's your dad like? Do you even know like his personality at all? Is it just like he's a guitarist and he does what he has to do to further that, or is he like a narcissist? Like, what is the like?
don't know. I guess I don't know him that well, but I do talk to him on the phone kind of often, and like our conversations are normally about the same thing. It's just kind of like casually catching up about things, but I don't really say a lot about what's going on with me because I don't really know him, and so we don't really have that kind of depth in our relationship. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard, when parents are divorced, they say such horrible things about each other sometimes, and so my mom has a really bad version of him in her head that she tries to, like from her point of view, he's a bad person. And from my point of view, he just seems like a struggling person, like a struggling artist. And I can actually relate to that because the only thing that makes sense to him is playing music, and everything else is really hard. And that is definitely how I am in the world. So there are things I can relate to about his personality, but I think I just don't know him well enough to really make a lot of assumptions about his character.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really difficult. It's a really difficult position that you're in, too, where you are... It's not just your dad you're reacting to. You're also reacting to your mom's... I'm sure at some point she had empathy for him, and, it maybe just ran out, after so long. You're now reacting to her version of him, and you're trying to figure out how to navigate both the real person and this kind, because you're being raised by your mom, her version of him, and figure out whatever the reality is in between those things.
Exactly. Yeah, it's tough too. My mom is like a very successful person, and in her eyes, I think my dad is like not that way at all. So I think that they're just on such different levels when it comes to what they care about in the world. I can see why it didn't work out.
Is she, when you say successful, is she ambitious, or is she just someone who like happens to... have you ever run into people who are just like, well, they're not very ambitious, but they just catch something, and so they're successful in that way? Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, she is extremely ambitious, and she's like an incredibly hard worker, and is kind of like a workaholic too. Like, she has to have many projects she's working on, and she's started so many different businesses throughout my life, and she was like an art school teacher and a hairdresser and a chef and an artist, and she's just constantly got her hands in so many different projects, and she really just kills. Like, everything she does very well. It's kind of like her motto. She has this, I don't know if this is something that actually came from a book or something, but she always says, once a job has just begun, never leave it till it's done. Do it, be the labor, great or small. Do it well or not at all.
What are her grandparents, or what do your grandparents do?
My opa lived with us for about, I think he lived with us for like 7 years. My opa passed away a couple of years ago from dementia, and he was like an engineer. He worked on the Hubble spacecraft, and also like made the first fruit roll-up machine, like engineered the actual machine. And he was definitely a workaholic and passed down that saying that I just said to my mom. Mm. And and she then took care of him in our house while he had dementia. And that was also part of the reason why I moved to Asheville, because it was like very confusing for my 16-year-old brain to be in the same house as someone with dementia while I was trying to like do high school, and I was getting bullied at school, and it just was like all clashing pretty hard.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, because at that point you don't have any kind of like safe space then, right? You're getting it at school, you come home, and did your grandfather have any moments of lucidity, or was it just kind of like...
He did, yeah. It was a slow decline, but I don't know if you know anyone who's had dementia, but they're often like violent or can get really confused. And yeah, there were some incidents where like I was trying to, help him, and he would like throw me to the ground, or like he was always trying to punch us and stuff, it was like funny, but also not always funny. We definitely made light of it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So then you move in with your sister. Do you have a relationship with your sister prior to moving in with her?
Not really. My sister is 11 years older than me. I have two sisters, and they're twins, and they're a lot older than me. And they have always been kind of separate from me just because of their twinship and their oldness. I don't know. We're definitely a lot closer than we were, but they used to kind of just see me as like a really annoying little sister, and they didn't find it in themselves to actually connect with me, or kind of see me as a person. So when I lived with my sister and was going to high school, there was definitely a huge disconnect, and she didn't want to be living with me, and she was annoyed that she had to like drive me to school, and we were very disconnected. So I eventually, when I was only living with her for 1 year, and then when I was 17 and I was in senior year of high school, I met someone who was older than me. He was 24 at the time, and I met him on the street. He was busking, and then I fell in love with him, and then moved into his house with him and a bunch of other people that were older while I was still in high school. I moved in with him probably only a couple months after meeting him. And then my life just massively shifted from that point on. And I kind of was far away from my family for years after that, because I made this decision that was kind of like so strange to everyone. And then I became very much just like sucked into a whole different world for a while.
Do you mind if I ask about that? Because what like when you say this whole other world, what is the other world you're talking about?
Just meaning I was 17, and the people that I was living with were all in their late 20s or like early 30s, and they introduced me to like psychedelics, and they introduced me to a lot of things that I had never thought about, like a lot of music that I'd never heard, and styles of writing that I'd never heard, and just like, a lot of media and a lot of ways of thinking that I had never been introduced to before. And I was so just so embedded in that world that it was actually really hard to finish high school. And I almost failed high school because I was, just so distracted. I remember I would because for a little while they didn't even know I was in high school. I was embarrassed to tell them that because I was so young. I was underage. I shouldn't have been dating I was 17. So when I was in there for a little while without them knowing that I was going to high school, they thought I was older and I was just going to work. And then eventually I told them how old I was, and I told them that I was in high school. And then I told them I was like failing high school, and then they all kind of teamed together and helped me with high school. Like I would come home and we would all sit at a table and do all my homework together, and they kind of kept me on track for the end of my school year.
So your housemates who introduce you to LSD or shrooms or whatever, and pavement, whatever they're are then suddenly shift into being your tutors.
Yeah. Well, more like my internet engines. They would just like look things up online or help me with a math problem every once in a while. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you went basically to college without the school part.
Yeah, I guess.
College for me was like being introduced to all this new, besides going to school, besides the I was a philosophy major, besides that part. It was the radio station, being part of the radio station, being in a band, being introduced to music. Not the drugs part, because I was always scared of it because I grew up in the Dare era.
Oh, yeah.
So drugs always scared me. So, okay, so I assume you graduated then.
Yeah, I just barely graduated. I'm pretty sure that I probably didn't actually pass the test, but I was also very close to all my teachers. Like, I had really deep friendships with all my teachers. I've always been that way. I think I just always related to the adults more than the kids. So I'm pretty sure that they just passed me, even though I probably didn't do a good job. I was also like a huge stoner in especially my senior year of high school. I was just like very high every day at school.
At what point do you kind of like get out of this situation where you're living in this house and you're getting high all the time?
Well, I stopped being a stoner like after high school. And then I didn't leave the situation with that world of people until like 4.5 years after that. So and that's during that time I wrote most of the 2 albums that I've put out during those 4 years, because those were probably like the most intense 4 years I'll ever live in my life. That was like before I knew anything about functionality or stability. So that's where a lot of like flailing language came through. You know,
not to put too much of a point on it, but maybe that's some of the sadness I was picking up on in the music is this kind of like tumultuous, no authority kind of like living.
Exactly. Yeah, I learned a lot. I'm very grateful for that period of my life, and it was really just beautiful. Like, it was dysfunctional and hard, but it was also beautiful and filled with a lot of love. And I learned from it, and then I left it, and here I am on the other side, and I found like so much, just something about that, coming from that experience and then coming into this new place of like self-love and functionality and boundaries, and I'm grateful for the experience, because I wouldn't have like the language that I have now for an emotional language and a language to write through.
We're right at the end, but do you mind if I ask about that? Because like to someone outside of it, right? I don't know. It doesn't seem great from the outside. I don't know how it felt from the inside dating someone, especially like in these formative years, like that was like that much older than you. I'm kind of curious about like what it was from the inside and what this experience was, like the negatives and the positives. Because you said there was a lot of love, but also like it was dysfunctional. Yeah,
I mean, from the inside, I was just very young, and I just wanted to do what I wanted to do. And when I fell in love with this person, it was just like nothing else mattered. I was just very enveloped in that feeling, and I was just kind of like, fuck anybody who tells me I can't do this. I'm gonna do this. And I think my mom, she realized that if she told me not to do it, or that I wasn't allowed to, or whatever, that she would lose me as a friend, and that we were very close friends, and I think she just didn't want to lose our friendship, and she decided that I could just learn that if that's what I was going to do, then I needed to learn from that decision, and that she couldn't just tell me what I could learn on my own. That it would make more sense for me to actually have the experience. I don't know. I feel like I shouldn't talk about that too much, like the details of it, but yeah.
No, I only ask because, like, I'm not like trying to be prurient, but just because like it seems like you formed as an artist, right, through this kind of thing, and that's more what I'm curious about is like how did your creative process form, change, however, I don't know what verb to use.
Yeah, honestly, the main thing is that person I fell in love with was like the best like songwriter I've ever come across in my life, and to this day we are really close friends, and we still, whenever we do get to see each other and hang out, we will often just end up writing songs together or writing lyrics or talking about lyrics. We'll show each other our lyrics that we've been working on and workshop them together, and I just really trust him as an artist, and he showed me so much music that was inspiring, and then also just wrote music that was inspiring and had ideas about structures of songs that were inspiring. And I just kind of took on a lot of those ideals myself. And I think that's what changed me, because he saw the way that I wrote then, and he kind of like, he knew that I was just young and I was learning about these very like specific song structures that come from like folk music and just really straightforward song structures. And he just basically told me I didn't have to follow rules anymore. Like once I understood those structures, I was free to move out of that world, and I could do whatever I wanted with songwriting, and I could make things sound dirty if I want, or gritty, or I could break things up, or he just showed me all these techniques and things that I had never thought about.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Can I ask one last question? Because, sorry, I'm like trying to think of how to like phrase this exactly, because death shows up so much. You were talking about, look, my bread and butter is existential crises. And you said death shows up you said that like you started thinking about death like in your teens, and it shows up so much in your music, and I'm wondering like what were these like existential crises that you were dealing with, and like how did you get through them?
When I say crises, I don't mean like a bad thing happening. More just like a moment of clarity. Like I'll just explain the first thing that happened. The first one, it was like a series of those moments that happened this one year when me and that partner at the time were traveling in this van around the East Coast, and we were playing music together, and we were just it was kind of just us against the world in this van, and we're both like very mentally unstable people, so it was like a very visceral experience to just be kind of floating through like that, and just surviving. And there was this moment when we were starting off our trip where we met my mom and my stepdad at this festival in the woods, and it's called like Hippie Jacks, I think, and it was during the fall, which is like a very nostalgic time for me in general. I love the fall. And I was just on this dance floor at nighttime, and there were all these sparkling lights, and my mom was dancing, and I could see her bones like moving under her skin, and she has all these tattoos, and I was just for the first time kind of realizing how like frail and small and fragile her body looked. And I kind of imagined that like anything could happen to her body at any moment, like like her organs could fail, like something could cut through her skin, someone could hurt her, like things can hurt her, and she's not invincible, and she is actually just her body is fragile, and bodies are just expendable, like they can just disappear at any moment. And then when their body is gone, like you don't have any access to that person anymore, even though that person feels bigger than what a body is. When the body is gone, there is no more person for me to talk to, or I'll only have like the thought of that person or the memory of that person. And I think just that experience, something like wild happened where like I was looking at her and thinking about that, and I wasn't on drugs or anything, but I started to have like a psychedelic break where it felt like my brain was like, there were all these kind of clock gears in my brain, and they were all just like ticking into this new state. And I suddenly like realized the weight of death how weighted it actually is. Not like just when people are gonna die, but actually what that means to be in this temporary world. And it just gave me such a appreciation for her and for everybody that I love, and it made me feel just incredibly sentimental, and I just wanted to like spread like as much love to people as I could, because it just made me realize the weight of life in general, and that everybody is experiencing loss and grief all the time, and everyone will experience that if they haven't already, and that it's just sad. And I think that is why my mom has been such a symbol in the artwork for the albums, and also in the songs, and why I named the album I Love My Mom. People seem to like kind of attach like a less weighted meaning to that, where they'll just be like, oh, you love your mom and you called it I Love My Mom. But it's more than that. It's like a symbol for mortality.
Oh God, you just saying all that stuff just hit really hard. Yeah, I get it. Wow. Thank you for joining me. This was great. And we'll see you next time. Bye. Bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh.